live, Vivian?
We are live.
Thank you. I want to call this work session of the Durham City Council to order at 1 o'clock on April the 23rd, 2020, another extraordinary distance session, work session of the Durham City Council. I want to welcome all my colleagues. I want to give a special thanks again to our tech folks, all the people from Technology Solutions, the people from Public Affairs, Vivian Cruz-O'Doherty, who always gets us ready and tees us up, especially, and really, really appreciate all the work that you all are doing to make these extraordinary sessions possible in a very difficult environment. So thank you. We'll begin with a roll call, Madam Clerk.
Good afternoon, everyone. Mayor Schul.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
Here.
Councilmember Caballero.
Here.
Councilmember Freeman.
Present.
Councilmember Middleton.
Here.
Councilmember Reese. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now proceed to announcements by members of the council. Any council members, if you'll raise your hand so I can see you, that would be great. I don't see anyone's hands up. I see Councilmember Reese.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just wanted to deliver some birthday greetings to a city resident we hear from a lot, but aren't hearing from today because we're not meeting in person, and that is Chris Tiffany. Our social media somewhat reliably informs me that Mr. Tiffany turned 70 years old today. And I think it's fair to say that I am not his favorite person on the Durham City Council. To be honest, I'm not sure he has a favorite person on the Durham City Council, and that is A-okay. I think Mr. Tiffany is someone who brings issues to us that nobody else is willing to talk about, especially not the very unique way that he brings them to our attention. But I just want to say in this setting that I am actually sorry we're not seeing him today, because it's, I think, just a part of our work is hearing from him periodically, and I hope he's doing well wherever he is. So that's all I had to say, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
I'm sorry, any further announcements? Okay, if not, we'll move to priority items, and we'll begin with priority items by the city manager.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and members of council. Welcome. The city manager's office has no priority items this afternoon.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Madam Attorney. Kim, I think you're muted.
Can you hear me, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I apologize. I can't get my screen to adjust. There are no priority items from the city attorney's office this afternoon either.
Thank you very much, Madam Attorney.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I do have a priority item. The mayor requested that I do some research about our boards, committees, and commissions and their reactivation.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Colleagues, I think what we'll do with the we'll vote to accept the clerk's priority item, and then we'll move it to the end of our agenda for some discussion. I just thought it would be good if we all got to weigh in a little bit on how we want to reactivate our boards and commissions. Does that sound okay, everybody? All right, can I have a motion to approve the clerk's priority item?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the clerk's priority items. I'm going to ask for everyone who's in favor to please raise their hand so that I could see them. Great. All opposed? The motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Madam Clerk, and we'll take that up at the end of the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we'll now move to our administrative consent items, and I'll begin with the City Clerk's office approval of the City Council minutes. Madam Clerk, I do have two corrections I wanted to mention for the March the 5th meeting, which I can send to you so that they could be made prior to our council meeting. just to mention them, one of them is on page 2 in the discussion of budget guidelines. It says that the manager Bonfield discussed locking in the tax rate at 0.07 cents. I think, I mean, that's not accurate. I'm not sure if that maybe only referred to the bid rate, but it needs more explanation and clarity there for the manager's remarks. And then it also mentions that I suggested language that, but doesn't say what it was about the budget guidelines, which I think it probably should, because I know that the management used that language to clarify the guidelines. I will send you that. And also on page 4 of those same March 5th minutes, it says occupation tax when it should say occupancy tax. So I'll send you these things in writing so you can have them prior to Monday night.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure. Item 2, Citizens Advisory Committee appointment. Item 3, Durham Bicycle and Pedestrian Commission appointments. Item 4, Durham City County Appearance Commission reappointments. Item 5, Durham Open Space Commission appointment. Item 6, Durham Performance Arts Center Oversight Committee appointments. Item 7, Durham Workers' Rights Commission appointments. And item 8, Participatory Budgeting Steering Committee appointments. Item 9, Recreation Advisory Commission appointments. Madam Clerk has been receiving ballots for this, and at the end of the meeting, we'll discuss how that balloting went, as usual. Departmental items, Department of Community
Mayor?
Development. Yes, yes, Councilmember Reese.
Do we want to talk about re-advertising any of these appointments?
Yes, thank you.
Should we do that at the end or do it now?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to request re-advertising the Durham Open Space and Trails Commission appointment.
I agree with that. Others have any thoughts?
I just wanted to let y'all know that I did share that same suggestion with the clerk's office yesterday.
Okay. So is everybody good with re-advertising Durham Open Space and Trails Commission appointments?
Yep, that sounds great.
All right, thank you. Then without objection, we'll do that. Thank you, Councilmember. Department of Community Development, item 10, contract with Housing for New Hope to serve as the Unsheltered Coordinating Agency. I'm going to pull item 10. Item 11, Amendment 1 to CN 14605, Lake Mickey and Little River Raw Water Pump Station Improvements Design Phase. Item 12, West Club Boulevard Corridor Utility Rehabilitation Amendment 1 to the Professional Engineering Services Contract. I won't pull this, but I will point out that it's going to hem me in because it's going to be on both sides of my house, and I'll be interested in how I'm going to get out of my house, but I bet you that can be handled otherwise than at this meeting. Item 13, bid report, March 2020. Item 14, contract with Ellerby Creek Watershed Association, Inc. And I want to pull item
Mr. Mayor?
14.
I was going to say the same. I actually just text you all of the items.
Okay, well, as we go through them, since I don't have my phone sitting right here, if you wouldn't mind just letting me know, that'd be great. Item 15, contract with Rebuilding Together of the Triangle.
I'm going to pull that item.
All right. Item 16, interlocal agreement with Durham County Soil and Water Conservation District.
Did you
Item
say 14 already? I missed that one.
Yes, the ones I've got so
Cool.
far are 10, 14, and 15.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, did you get weren't some of these, wasn't the administration asking that some of these be referred back?
I've not heard that.
It was in an email earlier today.
Oh, it was? Okay.
Maybe the city manager can help us with that.
Yeah. Mr. Manager, are we
I
referring? some of these-
apologize. I don't know that I've seen that email.
Okay.
I'll check with Ms. Wallace while you're going through this. And be sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, this is Deputy City Manager Bo Ferguson. We did request earlier in the day that 14, 15, and 16 get referred back, and I do think that got sent out via agenda coordinator, but I apologize to the manager if he didn't get that information.
No worries. We're in difficult times, and communication is difficult, so we're all just doing the best we can.
Right. Thank you.
Thank
But
you very much.
General Services has requested those items be pulled back.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Let me just, yeah, Thank you very much. 14, 15, and 16. All right, so we're now at item 17, proposed lease for Police District Number 1 substation at 915 Holloway Street.
I'm gonna pull that item.
All righty. Item 18, proposed sale of property located at 1415 West Club Boulevard to Garman Homes LLC.
And that one as well.
All right. Item 19, under solid waste, second amendment to the processing and marketing recyclable materials contract. I'm going to pull that item. Item 20, under Department of Transportation, Durham County Transit Plan. I'm going to pull that item as well. So the items I have pulled, yeah.
I was just gonna ask if there's a presentation with that one. What?
I don't believe that's planned.
Okay.
We have, Mr. Manager, I have 10, 17, 18, 19, and 20.
That's what I have too, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Okay. We are going to then begin with item 10, contract with Housing for New Hope to serve as the Unsheltered Coordinating Agency. And I pulled this item. So, you know, I want to begin by saying that this is a very impressive plan that we've got going with our homelessness work. And this is a key building block in our homelessness strategy. And I want to thank the county for jointly funding this with us. It's great to see our homelessness system start to come together in a big way. Beginning with the build out of the activities at Entry Point Durham, and now combining this with the street outreach and the encampment response. We've been funding that on an interim basis, but it's good to see this come forward. I thought that the standards were very clear and very rigorous, and I thought the training requirements were great. I do want to ask now, there are no training requirements in this manual, of course, for how to deal with a person who is an unsheltered homeless person who is, for people who are doing outreach to them in the era of COVID-19. And I wonder how we were handling that outreach in light of that. How we are planning to address through street outreach our homeless population and help them through the COVID-19 moment or months. And just particularly say I've been on the American Tobacco Trail quite a bit, and have where the trail crosses Fayetteville Street. There are often homeless people there, and there looks to be a group there now. And was wondering, no one that I saw was socially distancing, wearing masks, and I was wondering if the outreach, the status of the outreach to these communities is at this point. So those are my questions, and I'm not sure who's here for the administration too. Ms. Lotto, welcome. And Ms. Hoberman.
Good afternoon, Mayor Schul. This is Karen Lotto, Assistant Director of Community Development. I am actually going to ask my colleague, Holloway Hoberman, to answer the parts of the question that she can. Some of this we may need to get back to you in writing with some additional information, because as you know, a lot of the day-to-day work with the homelessness community is being handled through the EOC and the staff that we have deployed to the EOC. So we may need to follow up after Holloway addresses.
Understood. Thank you.
Yeah, and hi, Holloway Hoberman. I'm sorry, could the question be repeated?
Sure. One of my questions was, I know that our staff is going to need, the manual for this item includes a lot of great, the attachments includes a training manual, which is excellent. It talks about the training that people are going to be receiving to do the homeless outreach work. But of course, it doesn't include, because it couldn't have foreseen, training for homeless outreach workers to do, street outreach workers, to be trained how to work with people in the COVID-19 era. And I was wondering if that's one question. Are they receiving any training? And the second is, to keep themselves and others safe. The second question is, what is our plan for the unsheltered homeless over the next few months with COVID-19? We have the hotel that is that's housing people from Urban Ministries. We know the plan for families moving forward. I've heard a little about the plan for the unsheltered homeless, but I'm concerned to hear more and to hear what the plan is.
Sure. So to start off with the question about training for COVID, it's not something that the city is providing, but what I can say is that the folks that work closely with people experiencing unsheltered homelessness have formed a working group that includes medical experts. So they're working very closely with Duke Clinic, Lincoln Community Healthcare, and Durham Homeless Care Transitions, all of whom bring that medical perspective to the work to make sure that the work is being done from both a perspective of keeping the staff safe, but then also making sure that the client's medical needs are being met. So at the HSAC meeting on Wednesday, Julia Gamble from Durham Homeless Care Transitions and Duke Clinic spoke some about the concerns about hepatitis. Those concerns came from that work of street outreach workers partnering with medical providers to really assess those medical needs. I can also say that there's been a lot of guidance coming from HUD and other national experts and from the state on how to work safely with people during COVID, and that we're working very closely to share that with our providers, which of course includes street outreach. In terms of the question about generally our plan for responding to unsheltered homelessness during COVID, it is a concern. We are slowly starting to be able to open back up the flow back into shelter, and that is a slow process. We've been very focused right now on those who are medically vulnerable during COVID, so that's been our primary focus. Is we have a list of folks who are unsheltered and who have a higher risk of fatality due to a pre-existing medical condition or due to their age if they were to be infected. And we've been very focused on getting those folks into shelter. And at this point, I believe we have been able to completely move every client that is actively working with us out of that situation and into a safer, isolated shelter location. The next phase will be going back to a more traditional shelter placement through Entry Point, and we plan to start doing that towards the end of this week, today, moving forward, and it will uptick over the next 3 weeks until we're fully at capacity. Of course, that doesn't mean that there won't be unsheltered homelessness. One of the things I can say is that we've been working very intensively with NCCEH, the North Carolina Coalition to End Homelessness, in their capacity as the coordinated entry administrator of the COC to really push rapid housing. And I'm very happy to say that we're seeing results already. We are meeting weekly now to discuss people who need to be prioritized for permanent supportive housing, and we've already seen some success there. And we'll continue to push for our frontline providers, including street outreach, including Entry Point, to identify more quickly those folks who have higher barriers to shelter and are going to continue to experience that unsheltered homelessness. We're working very closely with providers like Carolina Outreach and other alliance providers who are aware of folks who have persistent unsheltered homelessness and might be outside of the normal realm of our system. But this is an ongoing effort, and I think that one of the benefits of the UCA contract is that it actually brings our capacity up higher to do this work faster. We'll be able to identify the clients faster, we'll be able to verify their homeless records and their disabilities faster and get them housed faster. So I think we'll only see improvements when this program really is brought online.
Thank you very much. That's a great summary. When you say that, so am I to understand that now that the people who are who have already been, that we've been working with, and the ones who are medically vulnerable have been housed in hotels, is my understanding? then are you saying that other people who come into the system through the unsheltered homeless outreach will be put into a traditional shelter situation? And does that mean they'll be, for example, in urban ministries in some, which will be operating at some very low level of occupancy? How will that work?
So yeah, I use the word shelter flexibly to refer to the ways our shelters are operating right now, which in some cases is a traditional shelter setting, like for families moving forward, and in some cases a hotel setting. I think it's important to really emphasize that this is still operating like a shelter. We're still prioritizing using entry point. We still can't guarantee spots, and not everyone is going to get access. And I think there might have been some confusion initially about that. So I'm trying to use that word shelter to emphasize this is still a shelter setting. We've moved that shelter setting to a hotel. So yes, anyone being served through urban ministries right now would be in a hotel setting, but it's that same process and we're considering it a shelter program.
So does that mean, Hanalea, that an unsheltered, so are we expecting demand that we can't meet from unsheltered people in the hotels? I know we've had a lot of people calling to be able to access the hotels who perhaps were not truly homeless or were on the verge of homelessness and that kind of thing. But for people who are unsheltered, do we expect demand that we will not be able to meet in the hotel setting?
Yes, I mean, I think that the plan is for UMD to eventually, within the next 3 weeks, to get back up to their normal capacity, which I think is about 122 clients for singles. So that means that there will be people who don't have a shelter option, as always. Our hope is to work really hard during this time to get people out faster, to house people faster, to do direct connections to housing, to reduce that. But by no means is this a guarantee that everyone who's unsheltered has a space. One of the benefits, I will say, of the current situation is we're able to do things right now that we can't normally. There's a lot of folks who have long-term persistent histories of unsheltered homelessness who normally won't go to shelter because they can't be sheltered with their partner, because they feel unsafe in a congregate setting. And we're getting calls about those clients now because they're more interested. So some of the folks who may have said no in the past or may not have made this work in the past may actually be interested in going in now, which is great, which means that higher vulnerability folks may actually be able to get access to the system and be able to be sheltered. But that by no means means that we're anticipating fully addressing unsheltered homelessness in Durham during COVID by sheltering everyone. I don't think that there's any expectation that we'd be able to do that.
Thank you. Thank you for the great work that you all are doing, you and Colin and everybody in community development. I think you've done a great job building the system out. If we would not be nearly as prepared for this crisis had you all not been laying the groundwork for Entry Point Durham and the street outreach. So thank you so much. Colleagues, other colleagues with questions or comments, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. And thank you, Hanalea. I had a quick question about Housing for New Hope. Do you have a sense of how big the organization is right now? Like, what's their annual budget? How many staff? And is this investment from the city and the county a significant increase in their capacity to do work? And what's your sense of their plan for like hiring and skilling up people to do the new program and like getting this new program up and running?
Right. So in terms of specific numbers about their budget and how many staff they have right now, I want to say that we'll follow up on that with specific numbers. But in terms of the question about their capacity, this is an expansion of their capacity. As we spoke about a while ago, they did have, through Alliance funding, an assertive engagement project that did have staffing. They then lost all but one of those staff members. So they're rebuilding. But we do anticipate they're going to be rebuilding to that place that they were at before and then growing beyond that. One of the things that we're working very closely with them on is actually bringing on new services related leadership because they're expanding their services capacity so much, and because the expectation for high intensity services for this program is so high, that there's really a need for leadership who can focus on that services piece, because they are expanding. And so we worked very closely with them. We actually took about from the point when the RFP process closed and an award was recommended, actually to the point where we submitted this contract, we took about 2 months actually working with them, meeting with them about, I would say, 8 hours a week, working very closely on their plan for staffing capacity, making sure that they had a really, really feasible budget for the program, that the staff that they were planning on hiring would be able to bring this up to capacity. So this has been a really close collaboration to build up the program design. And I think we feel really confident through that work that they're ready. They're already starting to look at that hiring piece, and they're really ready to bring on that additional capacity. Sorry, I was just making sure that I wasn't getting information. Yeah, so that's right. Housing for New Hope is providing me with the information. Their current budget is, well, they said 2.5. I would assume that's 2.5 million. And, and they said they currently have about 20 staff. So this program, we would anticipate there'll be 4 new dedicated staff in this program. So that'll, including the current supervisor of the program, that'll bring it to 5 dedicated staff for the program. And then with the new leadership they're bringing on, that person will be partially dedicated to the program. And then they're also planning on utilizing some of their existing community outreach staffing to also partially support this project. This is really going to be an agency-wide effort, because it is such a unique contract in that it does have that direct services component, but it also really has that community coordination and leadership component as well. So it's going to cross-cut across their organization to be able to bring this to fruition.
Thank you. That was really helpful. I'm really glad that we're able to support the organization. They do a lot of work with us already, but it's comforting to hear that y'all have been working really closely with them on the expansion, because I know that can be really hard for nonprofits to add new programs or to expand significantly their staff or their scope of operations. So thank you. I'm really glad that we're moving this forward, even though the circumstances have changed significantly on the ground. Thanks.
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. Are there other questions or comments on this item? Raise your hand or speak up, either one. Okay, I don't think so. Thank you very much, Ms. Hoberman. We appreciate you and the work you're doing. Thank you, Ms. Lotto. Thanks to Reginald. Thanks to all of you all in community development. This is a great step forward, and best of luck to our folks out there in the field, and tell them to stay well. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll now move to item 17. If I can get my computer back up here, let's see. Item 17 is proposed lease for District 1 Substation at 915 Holloway Street, and Councilmember Freeman pulled this item.
I did, thank you. I actually am glad we had that full conversation about the services we're providing and funding we're spending around homelessness, and recognizing that can you hear me? I'm just making sure I have a different earpiece on.
Yeah, we can hear you.
But just noting that a prevailing factor in homelessness is often race, and then often it's also followed up by income. I wanted to point out that in this memo, I noted that there was a note to say that the Office of Equity and Inclusion there was no requirements or review. And I wanted to find out if there was a reason why the dollars we spend around development, which is more like asset focused and equity focused, there's nothing in place to review it, so that we're looking at who owns property that we're putting rent funding into. So it would be like, so over the last, we're talking about $2.9 million for 10 years. That's almost $3 million that we're pouring into as an asset, or pouring into someone's asset. And I wanted to make sure that we're evaluating that against, some of the other property owners who may not be receiving these funding. So just making sure to hold it up and say that this would be a good opportunity to make sure that the Office of Equity and Inclusion is included in this conversation at all times.
Thank you, Council Member. Duly noted. Is there a question that you want to add to that?
Specifically, when you're evaluating where you're using your rentals or where you're putting rentals, is there a process that includes Office of Equity and Inclusion, or is there any process that includes looking at race?
This is David Fleischer from the General Services Department. The Equity and Inclusion Department does not have any requirements for the location of rentals to be judged or to include the question of race or equity and inclusion. In this case, this site was chosen due to its location and its ability to facilitate the needs of the police department, especially our very heavy need for parking of the police personnel's personal vehicles, as well as, of course, the police vehicles. Also, the location of this is in the Albright neighborhood, which is in northeast central Durham, and is most appropriate for locating toward the center of District 1. And that's how this site was chosen. And again, there wasn't any additional thought given toward equity and inclusion, and there was no review by the Equity and Inclusion Department.
Can I ask a specific question? Is this property owner of color?
I do not believe so, no.
Okay. That would be all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fleischer. Thank you, Councilmember Freeman. We'll now move to item 18.
I think I pulled that one as well.
Yes, you did, Councilmember. This is proposed sale of property located at 1415 West Club Boulevard.
And similar to the last go round, I think anytime there's this is a proposed sale rather than a donation. But in this sale, I noticed that there's a contract in it. I wasn't sure if there was a point, like I might have missed it. So I'm being very clear. I read through it very quickly. Is there anything that includes something around affordable housing in this sale?
Again, this is David Fleischer from the Real Estate Division of the General Services Department. There is no proffer of affordable housing. This is a very small, and by that I mean 30 by 30 foot area that the city has as residual from the development of Club Boulevard. It was offered for purchase from the adjacent property owner. There is no other property owner that would have this or want this in their inventory, and there's nothing that the city had a need for. We got a good fair market value offer for this property and recommend that we sell the property to the adjacent property owner.
When you say that the city doesn't have a need for, do you think that the city doesn't have a need for affordable housing?
No, ma'am. I mean, for this specific parcel of property, there's no need from any of the city departments. The water management department doesn't need it for a water line. Transportation doesn't need it for sidewalk, et cetera, that we have checked with all city departments to make sure there was no public need for this. With regard to affordable housing on this property in particular, again, it's a very, very small undevelopable property, approximately 30, and now I'm looking, it's 30 feet by 36 feet.
And Mr. Fleischer, it's not buildable in and of itself in any event, right?
That is correct.
And I'm not saying specific to the 30 by 30 property. I mean, the property around it is about, I think I saw about 2 acres, almost 2 acres. So the property that'll be built, once the property owner purchases this piece of land, that has no stipulation of affordability included with it. But I wanted to direct this more to the council and acknowledging that if we don't put something in place when staff is reviewing these items, they don't have any lever to say or leverage to say to property owners who are potentially looking at us. You know, they're building housing, so can we put something in place that says to at least review for the possibility of affordable housing being built in that space?
Thank you, council member. Any comments, members of the council? Mayor Pro Tem.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, when I first read that item, I was also concerned about selling residential property that the city owns to a private developer. But given the size of the piece of property and the fact that we can't build anything on it, I thought the sale was reasonable. What I do think we should consider for this sale and also for any future sales of residential property owned by the city is that the proceeds go into our affordable housing fund so that we can then use that money towards our affordable housing goals. So just wanted to suggest that to the council for this particular action, and then also ask the staff to come back to us with an idea for a policy that would make that happen automatically whenever we sell any residential property. We don't do it often, and it's not usually anything high value, or we would keep it and try to give it to a nonprofit or build something on it. But I think it would be in keeping with our goals and our values to make sure that that money goes into affordable housing.
Thank you. So you're suggesting that for this action, I guess what I would say is that why don't we keep this on the agenda for Monday, and we'll look to our city management to come back with any thoughts that they might have about that, and we could take action on that at that time on Monday night.
Will do, Mr. Mayor. And in fact, if we need to amend the recommendation, we can take care of that in the meantime.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Thank you, Mr. Fleischer. Anything else from council members? All right, thank you all for that. Those were good thoughts. We'll now move on to item 19. And I believe I pulled that one. This is the second amendment to the processing and marketing recyclable materials contract. Hello, Mr. Ryan Gruber, how are you?
I'm great. How are you doing, Mayor?
Thank you. It looks like the total revenue swing in a couple of years here is we were bringing in $450,000, and now we're in a year or two we're going to be paying out $750,000. Do I have that about right?
Yeah, we could pay out more than $1 million next year with this new contract. So it's quite a big swing. Quite a big swing.
And I see Mr. Long as well. Hello, Mr. Long. Thank you for joining us.
How are you?
So, what is our per ton cost to ship waste versus the per ton cost we're paying for the recycling?
Right now, we're currently paying $40.94 for garbage. And for recycling, we're paying roughly $65.
Okay.
Now, under the terms of the contract that we are seeking to get approved today, starting July 1st, we will be paying up to $100, if not more than $100 per ton for recycling.
So I think that what it would be important for our public to understand is that, if I have this right, is that we're paying now, instead of receiving income from recycling, we'll be paying about twice as much money per ton to recycle as we will to ship our waste out and just have it landfilled. Is that about right?
Yes, sir. The script is totally flipped from about 3 years ago.
Yeah. So we're still doing single stream, and you all are recommending still doing single stream. Do we think about changing this to having our folks our residents do more sorting so that we can only be recycling what will can be productively recycled and be landfilling the rest? Do we, is it, what's the philosophy about continuing the single stream? I know this is a big national conversation. I wonder what your thoughts about that are.
We are in favor of continuing the single stream for right now, because first of all, we don't want to break up anyone's culture or habits of the way they recycle. We want to keep it as is so that we don't be jumping back and forth between what's good and what's not good. But we are going to do some concentrated efforts to get people to know what are the most valued items and what items that whether they recycle or put them in the garbage cart, it really doesn't matter. Like, we're going to be pushing cardboard, and I think we're going to be pushing some types of plastics, and glass is not paying any money. But should the recycling economy shift around, I don't want to break up someone's habit and say, okay, now you can go back to doing this. I know I wanted you to stop, but now I want you to go back. So for right now, we're going to keep it as is.
Okay.
Understood. And Mayor, can I also add, we're working on this on a regional level. We have a group formed that we're working through Triangle J to get some regional consensus on exactly what those high valued items are, and to try to curtail some of the costs that we're paying out to processors.
Thank you. That's really helpful to hear. I think
Mayor, I would say, when we meet with you tomorrow afternoon, you'll see the financial model for solid waste department, and you'll see how those costs build in over time affect the financial model, and the extent that it would be affecting the tax rate in the future.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Caballero.
Yeah, I missed the cost per ton. Was it 40 per ton for shipping to the landfill?
For garbage, yes, ma'am. It's $40.
Okay, thank you. And then secondly, tomorrow when we're talking about solid waste, are we going to be also talking about composting and the impact that would have if we did really roll it out aggressively?
I don't know that we have planned that level of detail on composting. Tomorrow's meeting is much more just kind of an overall financial piece.
Okay.
We may have some additional information, but I think at this point, that's going to be a fairly small percentage of the total tonnage.
Yeah, but I know eventually, we can divert up to 30% of our garbage stream if we compost, again, aggressive. And I know that that's a long rollout, but I just wanted to.
I have to defer to Mr. Long on that.
Yes, ma'am. That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. Any other questions or comments for Mr. Long? Raise your hand or speak up. Okay, thank you all so much. We appreciate it. I do think that educating our public is really going to be important. And I think we can do that. We have sophisticated residents in Durham who can, I think if we tell them the things that we shouldn't be in the cart, I think we can educate them to that and save ourselves some money and not do the planet any harm. So I think we'll look forward to guidance from you all, Mr. Long.
Yes, sir. We will pass our guidance on to the citizens as we develop the strategies.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Now we're going to move to item 20, which is the Durham County Transit Plan. And I know I wanted to pull this. I'm not sure I was the actual person that did, but we'll begin with that. Mr. Egan, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this item is for consultant support for us to begin the public engagement activities, as well as technical support and analysis of the transit plan. So that will enable us to get input, and then use that to provide updates to the plan and do technical analysis. So Aaron Kane from the DCHC MPO is here, and he can speak to the details of the contract that's being presented. Aaron?
Sure.
Yes, the contract that's before you is for about $670,000. It is combining three things. One, the development of the transit plan itself, and then also working on two other things to put together a COA, an analysis of operations for Go Durham, as well as developing service standards for Go Durham moving forward. So those are kind of two add-on pieces to the contract that we're doing in conjunction with and using the same consulting firm.
Thank you. Are we, how are we feeling about the city's kind of seat at the table through the development of the transit plan, Mr. Egan?
So we're very pleased with the cooperation that we're getting from our partners in the county, at the MPO, at Go Triangle. It's been a very collaborative process where our feedback has been solicited and welcome. And this is a good example of this contract where we had needs that we felt really should be incorporated into this effort, the comprehensive operations analysis, as well as the service standard development. And our partners were very receptive to including those elements in this, and we saw some benefits in terms of efficiency of incorporating them in here as opposed to doing them as standalone efforts. So the partners have been very receptive and very supportive of our efforts, and we're very pleased.
Great. That's super. Let me just stray off topic for a moment and ask you how the transit system is working now, given our COVID crisis. You had updated us, I guess, a couple of weeks ago. And we've had a couple of letters from folks concerned about social distancing, but also about our ability to pick up all of our riders in a timely way. Wondering if you could respond to that and just let us know how the system is faring.
Certainly. So we've implemented masks and face coverings for all of our frontline staff who are out in the field in operations. So they all have the benefit of that personal protective equipment. We've also implemented some new maximum capacity standards for our Go Durham bus service. So we're now using 16 people, 16 passengers as the number. So there is some discretion for operators if there's someone in significant need to go beyond that, but operators are generally adhering to that 16 people per bus. We've designated seats along the bus to ensure that we can maintain appropriate social distancing. As you mentioned, that does create an issue of when the bus reaches capacity, the destination sign lights up that the bus is full, and that puts us in a position of not being able to serve riders at stops once the bus reaches that capacity. So what we're doing right now is evaluating options where we could send a follow-on vehicle behind that bus as a way to pick up riders who would not otherwise be served. And we're also looking at reevaluating service levels where we potentially have some routes where service frequencies are not generating high loads, and we might be able to reduce service frequencies in those areas and use that to increase frequencies on the routes where we're seeing higher loads. So that analysis is underway, and if we can identify opportunities to increase service frequency on the route seeing crowding or develop alternatives to serve those riders, we'll be working to implement those.
Thank you. That's very helpful. I really appreciate that. Any other questions or comments for Mr. Egan or Mr. Kane? Thank you all very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Councilmember Freeman, I'm sorry, did I miss you? Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Now we can.
I was just trying to understand, when you explain it, are you saying that, hold on one second. Are you?
We can hear you, council member.
Are you saying that when the decision was made that once a bus got to 16 passengers, that you would pass by, because that was the comment that was made in one email, that you would pass by passengers on the side, and if they needed to get to work, they were just left on the side of the road or at the bus stop?
That is unfortunately the result of the need to maintain social distancing on the buses. If we're not able to address crowding and maintain appropriate social distancing, we're exposing potentially our passengers and our staff to additional risk.
I really appreciate that. Any other questions or comments from Mr. Egan or Mr. Kane?
And how many, how much notice was given prior to that?
Thank you.
Okay.
Councilmember Freeman, I'm sorry, did I miss you? I think we're hearing someone's recording, maybe, Madam Clerk, are we hearing the recording on our?
I'm just trying to understand.
Councilmember Freeman, hang on one second, okay? Madam Clerk, I think we're hearing the recording or someone's recording of the session.
It is not my recording. I'll check with Public Affairs.
Okay, I hear you, Councilmember.
Okay. Are you saying that when the decision that once the bus got to 16 passengers, that you would pass by, because that was the comment that was made, and
we're hearing some kind of recording.
Pass by passengers.
I think the recording is coming from Deidreana from do you have a device playing the meeting from a streaming service or?
That is
YouTube maybe,
the result of the need to maintain social distancing on the buses. If we're not able to.
Okay. Yeah,
So yeah, that understanding is correct. So what we had initially been doing was asking our operators to use their judgment and discretion to manage when they thought that it was an appropriate level.
I just wanted to know how much notice the passengers were given, and if they were given any notice prior to that happening. Because it's pretty hard to plan your travel, especially if you're going to work, without enough notice.
So what we've been trying to do is use our social media and other communications channels to get the word out about this, but we have not been able to get as much notice as we would normally do if we were doing a policy change because of the dynamic environment that we're in. But we're hoping to use all of our communications channels, including folks who are tuning into this, to let them know to be prepared for that, and that we're taking steps to try to minimize the occurrence of that right now, but that is a requirement that we're facing right now.
And can you also make sure to use the Engage Durham folks who are already in the community to get that message out as well? So you should be talking to the folks in Neighborhood Improvement Services.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other council members? Yeah, I want to stress the importance, I think, of getting these additional follow-on vehicles or whatever it's going to be, because we all know how important this service is. And you guys, I'm very proud that we've been able to maintain the service under difficult circumstances, and that we're protecting our riders and our frontline workers. But I hope that you all can come up with a solution that will enable us to be able to pick up everybody that needs to get picked up in a more timely way. I know it's hard to do it. I know it's resource intensive as well, but I think it's important.
Understood.
Thank you. Other comments, questions for Mr. Egan or Mr. Kane? Thank you all so much. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I believe we're circling back to Madam Clerk, had raised the issue in her priority item of the meetings of our boards and commissions. I'll summarize what I know, and then I think we should talk about how we want this to take place, and I'll look to the advice of my colleagues. We need to come together and figure something out. We have various boards and commissions, some of whom have been meeting kind of informally. For example, I know the Mayor's Hispanic Latino Committee met informally to make some proposals to us about how we can communicate in Spanish and to our Latinx community during the COVID crisis. The Environmental Affairs Board is a joint city-county group. They very much want to meet. I believe that BPAC also is a group that wants to meet, and I know that some of our others want to meet as well. And I think we have already had meetings of groups that are more mandated to meet. For example, the HSAC, which is as a federal mandate, has been meeting. So we need to figure this out, and I think that we would all like to figure out a way for our boards and commissions to move forward. I think that some of the issues are public comment, potentially public participation. Public access, potentially public comment and participation. Those are issues that have to be sorted out. Whether or not we want groups to use the same platform. If so, what is that platform? Or are we, because these groups are more, some of them are quite ready to get going on their own platform, should we make that available to them? There is the issue of some members of some of these groups, a minority of groups, but some members having access issues themselves in terms of the technology. And then there's also the fact that we don't want to burden, we cannot burden our staff with a whole lot of work around this. We have so many commissions and committees that our staff could not possibly do a whole lot of work to get all these groups set up and rolling. So we need a solution that is pretty, that is user-friendly for the groups themselves. So those are some of the thoughts that I have after talking this over with the clerk and with the city manager and with some of the people on the committees and commissions. And those are my thoughts, and I wondered if you all would like to add your thoughts and also, and then maybe after we do that, we'll hear from staff after they've heard the responses of council. Anyone like to start us off? Councilmember Freeman?
Can you hear me? Just me. I wanted to ask the clerk exactly how many committees we have overall, because I don't want to set any precedent where some committees are meeting and some aren't. I know that you mentioned some are federally mandated to meet. If there aren't any federal mandates, why would this not wait until we were back open? I mean, at least till the city hall was back open.
So I'll answer that. The answer to that would be because there are a lot of these committees and commissions that really want to meet and start doing their work.
It's like the people that want to go to the beach in Georgia. There's going to be people that
they want to meet
the issue, but I think
they want to meet digitally. They don't want to meet in person. They want to meet online.
And what happens if the folks on the committees don't have online access?
I mentioned that, and that would be something we would need to figure out. I mentioned that as an issue. I agree it is an issue.
But is there any numbers to support what, like, I don't know how many committees, how many folks have access to them? Like, is anybody asked any of these questions to know where a majority of the folks are, how the breakdown works? Like, it would be nice to have more numbers in the conversation.
Well, we certainly know how many committees and commissions that we have. We certainly know that some of them meet only irregularly. Some of them meet once a month. And we also know that there's some that are really where we are more appointing members to other groups. We don't have any idea of how many people on each group may or may not have access to the technology. I'm sure it's a minority of the members, but we would need to find that out. Councilmember Middleton?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, colleagues. Can you hear me? Cool. And it may be coincidental, but it seems to me that the groups that have been most expressive about wanting to resume their work have been ones that they felt that they've had something vested in the upcoming budget process, which is totally fine and appropriate. I don't see anything wrong with that, but it seems the most vociferous have been those that have something pending before us. I would be comfortable with the language of authorizing and encouraging our boards and commissions to meet. I would be cautious about the language of mandating them, because I don't want to trigger any attendance requirements during this period. People that participate in boards and commissions, that they can get online and, if they have the same type of internet problems I've been having, I wouldn't want that held against them in terms of attendance, but I would certainly be open to authorizing and encouraging our boards and commissions using whatever platforms are available to them to meet. But I would want to just stay away from the language of mandate during this period and not trigger any attendance requirements. So that's.
I think that's a great point. Councilmember Caballero?
Also, I think to your point, Councilmember Middleton, some of the folks, I think EAB in particular, they do have things that they have that are more pressing. So maybe there could be guidelines sent, which are, we're encouraging you take an internal poll of your members to find out how many people have access. And if it is clear that most of the folks on that board don't have access, then maybe they shouldn't move forward. And that it is all optional, and that attendance isn't going to be held against any member.
Thank you. I'm taking notes here, and I'm appreciating all of these comments. Thank you. Madam Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you. One thing that I think we need to be really careful about is making sure that public meeting laws are followed and public access requirements are met for all of the boards. And so it might make sense to have some sort of, we have to come up with some sort of system where public access can be maintained. Zoom, of course, is a free platform where you can publish the details to get into your meeting, but for the free version of Zoom, you only get 40 minutes. And also there, is this trend of folks Zoom bombing open meetings, right? So someone is going to have enough technical expertise to know how to run a Zoom meeting, how to kick out someone who's interfering or disrupting the meeting. So I feel like there's some amount of training that we would have to give to boards, or at least a representative of the board, maybe like a technology chair or something, who could learn how to run the meetings. Our clerk's office has already published details for a couple of meetings on Zoom that our boards and commissions are having. So we could, just ask them to continue to do that as part of the reporting process, but we've got to figure out how to make sure, people know that the meetings have to be public and that they have to follow that law. And yeah, I think polling the members to see who's got enough digital technology available to them to make those meetings work is a great idea. I also, am concerned about attendance requirements for us. Honestly, 4 of us have young kids at home. They're not at school. In the, time that I was on mute on a previous call, my 6-year-old screamed for 45 minutes. So there's just a lot happening right now. So I think it's great if groups want to meet. It's great if they, want to continue to contribute. I want their contribution. I want things to continue. At the same time, I don't want to burden anyone right now with work that they might feel like they have to do. So I would be, I'm cautiously in support, I would say, with some trainings and some caveats.
Thank you. Let me make a suggestion. I think what would be good, you all have outlined a lot of good thoughts. Everybody has contributed some very important ideas about authorizing and encouraging, but not requiring these meetings. To pick up your language, Councilmember Middleton, the internal poll about access, I think is important. Polling the members about their technology and figuring out a way that groups can get technology to those members that don't have it, that want to meet. Public meeting requirements, not having an attendance requirement during this time, and having some sort of a tech expert who can make the meetings happen. And there may be other things. I wonder if we could, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, can I volunteer you to try to help write up a series of guidelines?
Sure.
And maybe would any other colleague like to join her in doing that? Councilmember Caballero, did you raise your hand? That would be great. If the two of you all wouldn't mind writing up some guidelines, in the next few days, say by early next week, that we could make available to our boards and commissions and committees. And maybe once you have them written up, share them with the administration and with the clerk's office and the attorney, and just see if there are any concerns that they have, so that we can get those out to our boards and commissions. And also, for those of you all who are more tech savvy than I am, which would be all of you, would you have any recommendations about what we ought to say about a platform? Should we recommend a single platform? Should we let people use the platform that their sort of internal technology person on their committee is most comfortable with? Or I see the city manager is popping up and may have a thought.
Well, Mr. Mayor, the Technology Solutions Department has issued a citywide directive about 2 platforms that should be used, either Microsoft Teams or Zoom, for a variety of reasons. They've done a lot of research, and that's the recommendations that we are requiring of our staff and following. I'm sure I know there are others. In fact, yesterday the Homeless Services Advisory Committee utilized a different platform than that we'll have to go back and address. But just wanted to mention that Technology Solutions has recommended that and actually put forth a definitive notice to these employees that they should be using one of those 2 platforms for a variety of reasons.
Thank you very much. That's very helpful. Councilmember Middleton, do you have a comment? I thought I saw your hand. No? Okay. Councilmember Reese and then Councilmember Caballero.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to add my voice to those who are expressing some skepticism about certain groups being ready and eager to move, certain committees, and more to the point, certain members of certain committees to be ready to move forward with meeting without any kind of sense of how widespread the availability is for all members of all committees to engage in these processes. I think if there's one thing I've learned over the last 3 weeks, it's that the world we're in now is conducive to allowing some people to participate in these processes and some people not to. And I just say that to say that also that were I on a board, committee, and commission right now and trying to do a full-time job and trying to homeschool my kids, that would not work for me, no matter what my technological situation is. And just by virtue of the fact that I had a job, I've got kids, I cannot now participate in this commission, while others certainly can and presumably will if we issue guidelines. That seems problematic to me. On the other hand, I get that there are commissions and committees that want to operate, but I wish, somewhat akin to what Council Member Freeman said, I wish we could ask, why is that really important right now? And for people for groups like the Planning Commission and the Board of Adjustment, I mean, they have to meet, and the technology is going to have to get figured out. But for other groups that are purely advisory right now, I hope that we can be more cautious and understand that that just because there are folks on committees who are eager to go forward, not everybody's in the same situation. And I worry that we risk leaving some folks out of the important work of these committees and commissions because of the situation we find ourselves in. So I just wanted to add those comments. Appreciate very much the Mayor Pro Tem and Councilmember Caballero for stepping into the breach to offer to navigate these waters with us, with staff, with our boards, committees, and commissions, and hope we can arrive at an answer that works for everybody. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. I do, Councilmember Caballero, I'll get to you in just a second, but one of the, I think that one of the reasons that I've heard from, there are a couple different reasons that I've heard from people about meeting. One of them, for example, with the Mayor's Hispanic Latino Committee, they really felt that they had an important mission at this moment. And they really wanted to communicate with us about how the city and our community is communicating with our Latinx residents and our non-English speakers. So, but I've also heard from people who are on these groups that this is a way for members of the groups to, it's a way to both connect and do something meaningful at this time. That's one of the things I've heard, is that people are looking for, from a couple people who want to meet, who very explicitly said, our folks want to make a constructive contribution. We feel like this is a way to do it. So just want to throw that into the mix. Councilmember Caballero?
I can follow up in an email.
Councilmember Freeman?
I want to just add to the comments and just note that I appreciate Councilmember Middleton and Caballero sharing some ideas on how to make it more equitable. But I really appreciate Councilmember Reese's points around how inequitable we continue to be, and the weight just continues to fall on folks who do have to split their time. And it starts to feel kind of intentional in a way that I've seen repeatedly. And so I'm a little pushed back on this. And it's consistently coming in a direction that feels very uncomfortable. So just noting that there's a dis-ease of folks around busyness, and it's almost like a disease. And people need to be busy doing and involved. And I don't think that when we don't take into account how much is going on in this healthcare crisis, we miss how many folks are losing family members, how many folks are actually experiencing this in a way that's not conducive to just continuing like business is normal. Like, it's not gonna we're not there yet, and we keep pushing to be there, and it's frustrating. People are experiencing this in really hard ways. I mean, the bus is passing them by on the sidewalk trying to get to work. And there's just so much that feels unheard in this conversation. And I'm just sitting with it and trying to figure out how to make it more clear that we have to slow down and we need to regroup on what the priorities are.
Thank you, Councilmember. I hear you and I appreciate the comments. Councilmember Middleton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Every once in a while, I'm reminded of just what makes me proud to be part of this group. And every single one of my colleagues has expressed something that I think is absolutely critical to this conversation across the gamut of what we need to consider. And I think it was you, Mr. Mayor, who said something at our last meeting about a desire for normalcy and where people can grasp more into normalcy. That's kind of the psychology of coping with the crisis. We try and find as much normalcy as possible. I think taking into consideration all that's been said, I think where people can do things, and we know we've got different abilities, we have different levels of access, and so folks' ability to stay normal is going to look different from other people, depending upon what their station in life is, which is why I think, again, the language of authorization and encouragement might be as far as I'd be willing to go right now. And it's incumbent upon us, for those that have access, if we get any type of input on the budgetary process, and we know that it's from a committee that we've encouraged to meet, but we also know that there may be some members that haven't been able to plug in fully. I think it's incumbent upon us to kind of couch that and contextualize that, knowing that you might be speaking for certain members on your committee or board, but we recognize that in this context, everyone may not have been able to plug in. And we're not penalizing folk who aren't able to plug in, and we're not going to add more credence to those that were as well. So I think us as the ultimate leadership group in the city, you know, it falls to a good friend of mine said we have to do what's hard. And I think one of the things we have to do that's hard is make sure that we maintain guardianship and maintain vigilance, that those that can access right now aren't given more weight than those that cannot. And that's hard. But I think we're going to just have to, you know, do that. So again, I'll just reaffirm, I would be comfortable with encouraging folk. I know folk are bored, folk want to stay involved and you know, and if you, God bless you, if you have the ability to do so, to stay involved and reach out and get on these platforms, I certainly would not discourage it, but I don't want to mandate it either. So with that said, for whatever that's worth, I would be comfortable with us going that far of encouraging and authorizing, but certainly not mandating. So thank you. And I want to thank all of you for, you've all said something in this discussion that I think really crystallizes all that we have to take into consideration. So very proud to be part of this discussion. Thank you.
Agreed. Thank you very much. Councilmember Caballero.
Yeah, so hearing, you know, the variety of opinions that we have on this, I think what makes sense to me is that we attempt to draft guidelines that kind of encompass all the views that I'm hearing, and then get feedback from y'all. And if there's consensus around that, we move forward. And if there's not, then we just maintain what we're doing right now, which is folks are not having their board and commission meetings.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Sorry, some of them are though. Like some boards have just decided to go ahead and meet. So we need to figure out like what our standard is. Yeah.
And I think that could also be in the guidelines so that other boards, if they're saying, oh, well, why is planning commission figuring out how to meet? Because their responsibility is different than, say, another board. And so that should also be included so that there's consistency throughout.
Yeah, agreed. And there are some boards, for example, the Participatory Budgeting Steering Committee has already set up a remote option, which they've been using to meet. Durham Housing Authority already had like a remote call-in option. So there are some boards that are going to be better prepared to kind of shift into this mode than others. I also want to, I think we can figure out a system that's going to work for folks. There are also people on our boards who, for a variety of reasons, might be better able to contribute now that things are going remote than they were when we were requiring people to actually physically come to meetings, or, you know, people with disabilities or people who have difficulty with transportation who might be better able to participate in a remote meeting. And I've had conversations on some of my boards about opening up remote options for people who aren't able to come. We've had the conversation about stipends for people on boards and commissions to make access easier. So I feel like this is kind of the viral situation has brought this to a head, but I feel like this is part of an ongoing conversation about how we run boards and commissions and how do we make sure that the highest number of people can participate. How do we create more equity in participation? And so that can also be part of the conversation that Javier and I are going to have, and the guidelines that we put forward around how we move forward in this situation, but also as we get back to whatever normal looks like on the other side of it.
Thank you. I would say you're making me think about, so for a group like the Durham Housing Authority, I don't think we need to speak in a way. You know, they're doing it, yeah. Right? Yeah, okay. Councilmember Reese.
I just wanted to point out that just now we received an email from our clerk that set out some of the things that are currently happening with our boards and commissions that, as the Mayor Pro Tem said, are actually going forward with, sorry about the dinging, going forward with meetings. And some of the work that our clerk's office is currently doing, has already done and is doing now about public notice for those. So encourage folks to take a look at that, because I just skimmed through it and it's very well done and very informative. So I want to thank the clerk for putting that together for us and encourage us all to take a look at that and think about kind of what that means going forward. Thanks.
Thank you very much. All right, I think we've done it. I'm looking forward to our little committee advising us and helping the clerk and all figure it out. Thank you. Let me just one other, this makes me think of one other thing. So Vernetta had, of course, a lot of committee assignments, as we all do. And my plan had been to simply reassign to the new person all of her committees and commissions, which is still what I'm planning to do. In the interim, I just want you all to know that if there are any pressing needs for the groups on which she fills a role, that I may be asking some of you all to step in on a temporary basis. So just giving you all a heads up on that. I don't think it'll be much, but it may be some.
Mr. Mayor, just real quick, I think the biggest need we're going to have, as you well know, is on the MPO. And that's where Vernetta's absence is, in my mind anyway, felt most acutely. I guess between that and the legislative committee, but that's a little bit longer term. I know that the MPO is planning to meet during the second week in May, or first half of May, I'll say. I don't know what form that meeting will take, but Mr. Mayor, as the alternate, we have historically relied on you, but I don't think it's fair to ask you to fill that role between now and whenever we move forward on the appointment. So that was just one I wanted to put a plug in for, as I'm sure it's already on your mind. So
thank you. Probably not on my mind as much as it ought to be, but I appreciate your mentioning that. And let's talk about that, the two of us, Charlie. Thank you. All right, Councilmember Freeman.
Just noting before we move beyond the conversation on the committees, I'm hearing the conversation of equity, but I would love to know how that's going to be tracked and making sure that that information is gathered as well.
Okay. We'll leave that to our committee to try to recommend that to, give us some thoughts about that. How are we going to make sure that the people that everybody's able to access the technology and so forth, and to let us know that.
And the notes from the meetings that have already been had are included as well.
Yeah, I don't know what the status of those is, but I assume that we could find out. Any other comments? All right, thank you all. Madam Clerk, thank you for raising this, and Councilmember Caballero and Mayor Pro Tem, thank you for taking it. I believe now we're down to the part of our meeting where we're going to hear from the clerk about the people who have the ballots of the various committees and commissions.
Good afternoon, everybody. We do have some results on the City Council nominations. And before I get started, I just wanted to make sure that with our new configuration of 6 council members, that the prevailing nomination will take 4 votes.
Yes.
Just want to make sure everybody is understanding of that. Okay, item 2, council has nominated, here again, we don't have 4 votes on the Citizen Advisory Committee, and I will read you the vote tally if you would like to approach it that way. Dr. Monique Holsey-Hyman received 3 votes, Rachel Eberhard 1 vote, and Carl Newman 2 votes.
Okay.
Madam Clerk, was I one of the Carl Newman votes?
Yes, you were.
Mr. Mayor, is it appropriate at this time for me to change my vote to the candidate who received 3 votes so that we have an appointee or a nominee, I should say?
Yes, it is.
Then that's
thank
what
you. So, thank you, Councilmember Reese. So, Madam Clerk will nominate Ms. Halsey.
Yes, Dr. Monique Halsey-Hyman.
Halsey-Hyman, thank you.
4 votes.
Just to be clear, friends, I had to send a corrected ballot last night. That was the one that I forgot to do, and I apologize. That's my fault. I'll do better next time.
Okay, thank you for that, Councilmember Reese. Item 3, council has nominated the following individual, Shyla Napier, to the University Student Facility vote. She received 4 votes. However, the Transportation Planning Policy nominee, we are tied at 2 votes for Jenna Beckman and 2 votes for Jasmine Joyner. Niles Barnes received 1 vote and Councilmember Freeman has no vote. So if we want to shift votes, we can do that, apparently.
Okay, thank you. I voted for Niles Barnes, and he's the best candidate, but I guess he only got 1 vote. I hope we will one day put him on this group. He is an incredible advocate, but all right. Anybody want to make the I'm agnostic about the others, so anybody want to make the case for Ms. Beckman or Ms. Joyner?
Which one is this one?
EPAC.
I'm sorry. This is the Durham Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission. It's the Transportation Planning Policy vacancy. And so far, Jenna Beckman has received 2 votes from Johnson and Reese, and Jasmine Joyner has received 2 votes from Caballero and Middleton.
Jasmine Joyner and Jenna Beckman.
Yes, those are the 2 that are tied.
Madam Clerk, did
If
you
I
say?
don't have a vote, you can put votes for both of them.
Well, you've already voted for 1.
Madam Clerk, I'm happy to change my vote to Ms. Joyner.
Okay.
I'm happy to do that as well.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Madam Clerk, I think that I voted for Ms. Joyner in the other category. So this, yeah, so it's a little confusing when they're the same folks who are running who are in both sections. Just, we figured it out, but in the future, maybe we should do something.
Okay. Duly noted. Duly noted.
Yeah, I also voted for her in the other one. Okay.
Okay.
We've got it. Let's move on. Yes.
Okay, item 4, council has reappointed the following 2 individuals, Bronwyn Charlton and Brant Smith, to the Durham City County Appearance Commission.
Thank you.
Item 5, council's nominated the Durham Open Space and Trails Commission at-large position to be re-advertised. They didn't nominate re-advertisement, but it's being re-advertised.
Yes,
Item 6, council has nominated Nicole Oxendine and Chuck Katati. Nicole is representing Arts and Culture, and Chuck is representing Facility Management for the Durham Performing Arts Oversight Committee.
Thank you.
That has passed. For the Durham Workers' Rights Commission, each of the individuals have been nominated. There were 7 on the ballot and there were 7 positions open.
Thank you.
And finally, for the Participatory Budgeting Steering Committee, there is a tie between Cesar Angiano Ortiz and Ashley Stewart. Each of them have both received 3 votes for Ward 2.
Could you tell me who I voted for?
Mayor, you have voted for Ashley Stewart.
Yeah, I'll switch my vote.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And then for Ward 3, there's another tie between Sean Almonte and Victoria Bright. Each of them have received 3 votes. Sean Almonte was voted for by Johnson, Reese, and Caballero.
Anybody want to switch their vote on this one?
Mr. Mayor, I'll switch my vote.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Middleton.
Thank you. And
All right, go ahead, Madam Clerk.
For the Recreation Advisory Commission, we have 3 votes for Cedric Burke, and then 1 vote each for Khan Reher and Sundra Morthy. The council members who voted for Burke are Reese, Schul, and Johnson.
Would anyone else who voted for one of the other three like to give their fourth vote to Councilmember Freeman? All right, Councilmember Freeman is giving her vote to Mr. Burke.
Okay, thank you very much. And that does it.
All right. Council members, thank you for your flexibility and cooperation. We know we get a lot of good applicants, and I think we have a good process of working with each other. Thank you. Okay, Madam Clerk, thank you for that. And now we'll settle the agenda, Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before we announce the settlement of the agenda, I did want to remind everyone that we do have a special budget work session tomorrow afternoon, beginning at 1 o'clock. I think it's currently scheduled for about 3 hours. I'm not sure it'll take that long. It might, but it will be back on this platform, and it will be televised as well. But just wanted to bring that reminder to your attention. And then to settle the agenda, we have all items on consent, items 1 through 4, 6 through 13, and 17 through 20.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Can I have a motion that we settle the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that we settle the agenda per the manager's recommendations. All in favor, please raise your hand. All opposed? The motion passes unanimously. The agenda is settled. I believe that that is all the business to come before this meeting, and so I'm going to declare it adjourned at 2:30 p.m. and I look forward to seeing all of you all tomorrow at 1 o'clock on the same platform.
Same
Mr.
bad
Mayor,
time.
will lunch be served tomorrow?
I look for it to be delivered on my front porch.
Well, I had that hot dog, and I can recommend that you make yourself one.
May have to do that. Okay, good to see you guys.
Thanks, everybody.
See you tomorrow.
Tomorrow.